We just did our check-in from last month, and now I would love for us to drop in to working a little bit with the inner part of us that has to evolve in order to really step into the role of practitioner or healer. And this inner work is so complex, right? And as we look at like the vital state chart, how much our trauma, how much our mindset, how much our emotional state like dictates how we can actually express ourselves in the world and take action. And so much of wanting to step into our role is towards that end of the vital state chart, which is through the expression and how we can hold space and how we show up and how we invite people in. And so last time talking about the offer is kind of working with that last category, the results or the action category, where we're putting something out. And so you've had a chance to like work over the last month or 6 weeks since our call and feel into like, how hard is this to put something out? What are these parts of me coming up and sabotaging this? What parts are feeling afraid or like, one common thing that we might all use some language around is like imposter syndrome, right? Like what parts of me feel like the imposter? And then there's like actual logistical challenges. And so this is where I was sort of reflecting with what Rachel shared of looking at where we're at on the map to fully stepping into ourselves as a practitioner. And I think part of what's tricky about really becoming a practitioner in this type of work, because it does ask so much of us to be aligned and to act in integrity, that we are balancing putting out something, but actually being prepared enough to hold and being responsible and being in right integrity. And so for us to be able to kind of look at our map and where we're at with clarity versus so much imposter syndrome that then we're just trying to like force through anyway and put the cart before the horse and, just offer something just because our ego wants to be offering it so bad. Right. So like this, it's hard sometimes to evaluate all of these pieces. So what I would love for us to do now is just take a moment for reflection. And if you want to just take some breaths. And I'm just going to walk us through just a couple questions to help you think about over this last month, some of the pieces that you have observed within yourself that feel like the thing holding you back from doing the next step, the next stepping forward in your business. And maybe even in these few breaths, you can kind of identify the core thing or one of the primary things that is getting in your way. Because the reality is we have many parts that are blocking us from running so full-heartedly into our business. But can you identify what might be like, this is this key piece I'm struggling with? So when you're ready, we're just going to go around the room, and if you can share just what comes up for you as one of the key pieces that you feel like you're struggling with to take the next steps, or put yourself out there. And then once we kind of hear that, we're going to go through a process today to start to work with some of these pieces. So who can start? Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, so I knew almost immediately what the block was. And there's two things that came up, right? So the core thing that it comes down to is belief. And the thing that's showing itself to me is queer people don't have the money to invest in something like this. Or they're not willing to spend that kind of money on something like this. Um, they like one of the people that came to the class on Friday, she has like physical disabilities and like is bedridden and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I would feel guilty asking her to pay me $2,000 to do coaching.
Mhm.
And so part of that I do believe is like the belief aspect of like, do I believe in her ability to pay this and to put in the work to do something like this? So yeah, that's what came up. And I think that's what continues coming up for me in terms of like putting myself out there and offering this to people.
Mhm. So that, so I'm gonna sort of give some question of reflection.
Yeah.
So is the concern that this demographic actually tends to not have enough money to invest, or it's probably and both, um is there a lack of belief in the value of what you're bringing,
Mm.
and that people will see the value in that?
Yeah, I do believe it could be a little bit of both. Because I know like right when we do the work on the weekends, it seems to come much more naturally to me. Whereas when I'm on a call with a client and they're just talking my ear off, it's a lot harder for me to just interject and start to just breathe with them and like walk them through that. And so I think that's also coming up in terms of um, yeah, like them getting value out of those calls.
Yeah.
But
Great.
yeah, also too, right, the investment piece is very prominent in my conscious right now. So
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jay.
thank you.
Who would like to go next? Go ahead, James.
Um, so I guess my adult self, that part of me that I recognize as the supporter and kind of that sturdy, deep love that I've been working to embody in my blueprint, it's not what is stopping me from going forward as I'm still continuing to take the opportunities like, teaching this class and like where it arises, to push forward with my coaching. But it's more so like I know I made a commitment to my family and specifically to Jasmine to be there to support the role of her and her school, which she has like 10 months left, right?
Mhm.
So I know that I'm there doing that, and ultimately that is the biggest importance right now, because it's making sure my dream team is all happy. Like that's the optimal decision for me. Suboptimal would be me just continuing to push and take more time away from my family. So what I can do within the time allotments that I have, which is typically my 8 hours at work, or maybe a chunk here and there after work, there is no part of me inside that's like, no, you can't do this, right? I might be a little bit nervous just because I still get nervous talking in front of people a little bit, but I feel confident in my knowledge, what I'm sharing, that this will be efficable to these people, and it is worth their time and money to listen to me. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at. Like I feel good with the fact that sure I'm not like knocking on doors and really trying to get people to come in, because I know it's going to come, and it's probably going to come more naturally when time allows. Because if I really push harder, it's going to create more resistance, I think.
Mhm.
And then there's going to be, when I do think about like jumping the gun and really getting going, there is this piece of me that starts to kind of get tense and flare up, because that piece of me is like, well, it's pretty selfish. You made commitments that you need to follow through, because this is a marathon. Like, I love my family, and I don't want me pushing to help other people hurt myself and hurt my closest people. So, long
So I'm going
story.
to ask a question, if you can check in with this question.
Mhm.
What about it, what about it is selfish?
What about it that would be selfish is that I made a commitment to prioritizing Jasmine's work and getting her to a point where she can, be feel like she's able to contribute to society and to our family. And if God forbid anything happens to me, there's a way for her to still support. So selfish would be, I would be going back on my commitment and my word.
Mhm. So
Right?
how,
I'm already, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, and I'm trying to feel into there's with every one thing that's coming up, it's that discernment of like what part's true and what
Mhm,
is a part. Like
mhm,
with a loyal soldier, or like a piece that's saying, oh, like you can't do this now, that would be selfish.
mhm.
And like what part is true, that like logistically there's about this much space where I can do this
Yes.
without compromising the other pieces.
Mhm.
Right.
And
And
I
so you
feel that,
said, like, when I think about like sort of when I rev up, I start to feel like, oh, that would be selfish.
right. And from what I can feel, we are at like logistically the capacity of time days we're able to do.
Yeah.
I'm out work all day, so when I come home, it's Jasmine's turn to do her work,
Yeah.
right? And we could find more babysitters so I could go out and do things here and there, but I also want to watch my daughter grow up. I mean, I am
Yeah.
her father, so
Yeah.
there's that pieces too. Like, if I'm helping myself and helping others, but I'm more absent in my daughter's life than I already am with working all the time, that
Yeah.
feels selfish. Like, I brought her into this world looking to be a mentor and guide for her and have that interaction.
Yeah.
And there's going to be so much time where I'm going to be an empty nester and just have all the ability, and but I would still like for her to come home and be like, Dad, I remember all these times that we had and we have a great connection, and like, I built that first.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump to the always and skip myself and the we part of us, right? Like taking care of everyone else and forget about my closest chunk, which is myself and my two girls right now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So be thinking about, as we go through, like anything else that might come up that is more feeling like a loyal soldier, or more for feeling like a point of suffering,
mm,
like that feels like a challenge in this situation for you.
mhm. Yeah. And I definitely dealt with that this past weekend up out of the school. There's a part of me that was trying to protect me from when I was just very open, like 3 years ago. Like, my heart was just wide open, and I was willing to do anything for everyone, and I didn't have any boundaries. And so there was a part of me that definitely uh, got protected by a loyal soldier. I worked through that, and I've been working a lot on reminding myself that I am going to follow I we always, even though I want to help the world. If I don't keep myself squared away first, keep my boundaries, and make sure I'm not giving more than I have to offer,
Yeah.
then it's going to happen again. So I've been working a lot connecting to my inner self, because I've felt that resistance. Like, if I do this, like, I might get taken advantage of, or you know, uh, yeah, just used. But I keep reminding this part of me that's saying, don't do that. Like, we've learned from the mistake, right? We can we can be very loving and open and still have the boundaries to protect ourselves first. So that's why I didn't bring that up, because I feel like I've kind of made it through that. Justin helped me get through that pretty good. So,
It's great that that came up and that you could work through some of that.
oh yeah, oh
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Moose or Rachel?
I can go ahead, Rachel. So I guess one of the biggest things that's coming up for me is finding the time. And I know I've been working on this stuff for the last few years to get to a point where I have the time to do what I want, and I do have the availability to sit down and start working on this stuff. It's turned into there's something else I would rather be doing, or I'm just so tired from everything else that I don't feel like really working on it and putting forth that much energy into it at those times.
So it was a little bit hard because you're breaking up a little bit.
Sorry.
Were you saying that like for years you've just been trying to find time, but then when you find yourself having time, it's like I don't want to work on it, or like I'm not.
Yeah.
Third space. Okay. And can you just like check in with the part of you that like doesn't want to work on it? And what that part of you, what some of those beliefs are.
A lot of it has to do with energy. I know from this past weekend, doing everything that we were doing with Enduring Pattern, I was really focusing on how extremely hard and difficult it is for me to actually hold that energy in my body. Like just after the bio, I was completely exhausted by having to try to maintain that much energy in my body. And I think that's part of my problem with like fatigue and like lack of desire and stuff like that. It's just so much easier for me to send the energy out instead of holding on to it. And that's what I'm struggling with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a piece of it is like just exhaustion. I'm curious if you can feel like the part of you that even if you're tired, like doesn't feel like you can or want to work on it. Like if there's a specific part around that.
Not that's coming through at the moment. I've been trying to sit with that stuff a little more, especially after last weekend. So I'm trying to work on it and focus on how I can hold more energy, and how I can, where's that feeling coming from?
I'm gonna give a little like projection to just sit with, and you don't have to answer it right now, but like maybe when Rachel's sharing, you can sit with it a little bit. I'm wondering if there is a part of you that believes like that you can't do it, or it's not going to matter, or that like it's not going to work anyway.
I'm not really feeling that much. Just from the few things that I have done, I feel pretty aligned with doing that type of stuff, and it was fun. Like I really enjoyed doing it, so I don't feel like I can't, or there's something that's creating this stuck feeling in it. It's just taking the time to do it, and then when I do have the time available, I'm just either tired or trying to listen to myself and focus on doing what I want to do at the time. Like in that moment, that's going to feel good to me, and it always turns out that it's something else.
Okay. All right. So it's like this part of you that is too tired, and like needing to go deeper into that part that like is holding all of that enduring energy, and like there's stuff to unpack under that. Yeah. All right. That's good. Thanks. Rachel.
Yeah, I think for me, I am struggling with still seeing myself as an authority. Again, when it comes to kind of one-on-one clients, I don't think I struggle with that feeling as much as I do when I think about putting myself out there, like with other professionals. And when I have sat with that, because I've really been working on that a lot, trying to figure that out, and sort of from this perspective, I think what I'm finding is that I have this polarization where, like, in my family, I am kind of an authority. I'm the oldest I have 3 younger brothers. I had a role of being sort of more of an authority, more of I would say like a parental figure. So at home, like I really had that role. And then like when I would go to school and I would have like teachers or others in authority position, I really struggled. And I struggle now even with like authority, I guess, so to speak. So I'm just noticing that when maybe there's a quality in other people who I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there are certain people, specifically professionals, when I'm trying to collaborate or meet up or network, where I feel like a little kid, and I have a really hard time seeing myself as like in the game too, and trusting like my work and trusting what I'm doing. And so there's still some stuff around that I'm working through, kind of figuring out, but I think that's a huge roadblock for me. There's also a fear of being seen. So when I'm thinking about putting myself out there, it's like I want to get as quiet as I can, or like as toned down as possible. So yeah, that was the thing that came up when you asked the question, Leah. So that's probably the biggest thing for me right now. It's just, yeah, I haven't. Oops, I think I lost everybody. Oops, I think I just lost everybody.
Little funky reception, Rachel. It was doing good, and then it was in and out.
Oops, sorry, I think I'm back.
Oh, yeah.
My internet totally just went out
for
a second.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, hopefully.
Mhm.
Okay, I think I'm back again.
Yeah. So you were speaking around, I like how you put the term of like needing to kind of step into like myself as an authority, right?
Mhm.
And like these pieces that come up around this awareness around struggling with authority, and maybe like that can put you into a space of feeling like a kid. I might have lost her again. Let's just see. Okay. For everybody else, is it just Rachel that's breaking up? Okay. All right, sounds good. But Matu, are you available? Sorry, guys. All right. I'm not sure. Oh, Rachel's coming in with her phone. Here we go. All right, Rachel, I think we've got you with your phone now. Can you hear us, Rachel? Okay, there you are. All right.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I emailed a document that is like a process, the Vitalist process of kind of like doing some like a level of mindset work is how I would say. And yet, sorry, I'm just pulling it up here. I can share it. You know, like obviously us needing to do some of the work and my gosh, I just got to get some of my file folders out of here. Like a more embodied way, but I want to just show you this process and talk a little bit about like as we step towards ourselves as practitioners and all of these processes that are included in doing the work. I am trying to attach a document to this. I'm struggling to find the chat box. There we go. All right. All right, there we go. It's in the chat as well. So just a moment to chat about like this process of stepping into entrepreneurship and these pieces that hold us back. And so one of the things that I love the most about working with entrepreneurs is that in order for us to fully step in as entrepreneurs, and not just entrepreneurs, because we're not just running a business here. This isn't just like corporate logistics, get something done. We're not just a business that is around, oh yeah, I know how to cross the T's and dot the I's and like create the service for someone. In order for us to step into this type of business, like we truly have to get right in our heart and right in our soul. And the journey to stepping fully into our calling or purpose is this incredible healing journey. So just like having children will call you into your deep work, just like finding a partner will call you into your deep work. The same is like finding your purpose and stepping into that, because we cannot step into our full alignment without clearing out the trauma, with all of these protective parts up, with being in patterns. Like we can't serve that way. And so I believe that the dance towards our purpose is this one where we have to very carefully navigate our path and use discernment to say, okay, like what is this of this thing that is coming up is for me in the sense of showing me, well, I need a little bit more time here, or I need a little bit more training, or I need like, there's some like real logistical things that need to happen, right? And what part of what's coming up for me is coming up for me to heal. And to be able to kind of face those pieces, face them head on, because so much what happens, so many times what happens is that the hard things show up and we just get into these ruts of self-sabotage. And so I'm going to use Tom's example because it's such a good sort of medium ground, right? Because it's not like super obvious. And Tom's example is like, I'm tired. And I'll relate this to my own life and how I'm navigating this in my own life. And so there's this relationship with Tom's being tired, and I could sit there and I could say like, okay, is that a loyal soldier? Is this a pattern? Is this something coming up? And maybe there's something to heal in that, right? Maybe not. Maybe he's just works a lot and his job's sort of exhausting and he's taking care of his mom and there's lots of things going on. And maybe Tom's just exhausted, right? But the next question is, well, how dedicated am I to this next phase of my life? And what am I willing to do to not be exhausted? And so there's like this facing it, right? There's this facing it with this responsibility of like, this situation is what it is. And how do I like work within this situation in the best way and with the most integrity or alignment towards the part of me that wants to move forward, right? And so a question is like, how fully am I showing up for the thing? And now I'm going to go to James' example, where with James, it's like, there's a lot happening. Like there's been agreements made and there's a plan in place, right? Like Jasmine's school is 10 more months. There's a move coming up. There's a life plan that is consciously in place. And yet within that, like 2 hours a week that James has to maybe dedicate towards his business, like I hear James saying like, this is an agreement. This is what's available right now. But then the question is like, how fully am I able to show up in that 2 hours a week and use it like in the most wise way that I can and with the most integrity, okay? And so meeting these challenges, because these challenges are going to be around our life, they're going to be around logistics, they're going to be around like, what's this total inner thing? And we're going to try to be overcompensating for our biggest wounds. If we feel like an imposter, oftentimes we're not like sitting there doing the work on that. We're like awkwardly grasping for things before we actually should. And then we're not finding our value in so many other areas. And it's all of this is just to say that it's complex, right? And that there's no necessarily easy piece. But I believe that this contract that we have to step fully into our role, whether it's 2 hours a week or whether it's this calling that we are following in our life, that the contract is of how fully can I show up for it and what's preventing me from fully showing up. And one of the questions I often work with to guide this in my own life is like, who do I need to be in order to show up fully? And like, what needs to change? And so to kind of come back to Tom's example, and I'll use some of my own, is, you know, you've heard me say like the last couple of years, putting so many of the Vitalist Institute infrastructure in place was sort of like where James has been. You know, it's like, this just is the things that need to happen. And therefore, because I was doing that part primarily, I wasn't able to get my home settled so much and my like space and my property settled for a while and like some of these other things in place, right? But now that that stuff's in place, my commitment for the next 2 years has been to create space for myself. And one of my biggest commitments is to balance my life based on not being too tired to do my business. Because it's those pieces of what is trying to emerge out of myself in the stillness that I know is my calling. Like I cannot access my calling anywhere but in my stillness. And so if I can't show up for my meditation, if I can't show up in the evening and learn and like be practicing my music and like showing up in my medicine spaces and like this fully rested, restored, grounded place, like I can't follow my calling. And so all of the actions that I'm taking in my day are based around keeping myself restored to show up for listening to God and listening to what's emerging next in me and all of that stuff. And so it's like I'm kind of just rambling on here, but I think one of the pieces I'm trying to communicate is that so much of the work is the dedication to our relationship with the integrity that we're showing up in. And then doing the hard work of seeing what's preventing us from showing up in that space. Okay. So first of all, any comments, questions, anything from my big rambles here? Sorry, I'm just kind of going off the cuff and chatting.
So I know I'm driving right now, but a lot of that I think spoke to just what I've been experiencing lately in terms of the fullness that I've been going through and living. Noticing that by giving myself time in the morning and time at night to be by myself, that's what's allowed me to do all of the things that I've been doing. Whereas right before, it's like give all of myself to everyone else, and then 10 p.m. comes around and here I am, right? And so yeah, that really speaks to just what I've been experiencing. So I appreciate you going on your ramble. It was good. And yeah, like you said, like showing up in that stillness, that I think spoke to me the most. Yeah, just really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it takes a lot of integrity to step into this work. It takes a lot of integrity. And part of this work is building that trust with ourselves. One thing I have learned about myself is if I watch TV, it's like if I watch TV at all, which is really nice to do sometimes, like, and I still do sometimes, but like, sometimes it's nice to just watch a movie or, whatever, especially like when I'm cooking and stuff. That's when I like to like put a show on. If I watch TV, it impacts my meditation space, even if it's like the next day. And so it's like these things I'm attuning to in my life of how I'm showing up and what has the impact and what am I willing to do to preserve the space I know I need to show up how I need to show up.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Because I think that also gives voice to the reason I've been mindful about my social media usage, right? Because like I think what first brought it up in terms of just the awareness of why am I on TikTok all the time? Why am I on Instagram all the time? It's because I was looking for that connection can only be found within myself. And so, yeah, just like noticing that and being like, well, what else can I be doing with this time? Right. And like you said, like it's interrupting all of these other things that are going on in like this life here, right? Like it's so wild. But yeah, I think building this business and putting myself into this is what's been helping me get off the internet more often. So yeah, thank you for.
Love it. I love that share. And I love how you brought even looking at social media with that lens, right? Like, what is it that I'm actually seeking for this? And how am I using it in an intentional way that isn't just about like sort of the unhealthy aspects of the masculine, which is just about like the result oriented and I don't care how I get there, but like, what is the journey of this? What's the heart connection in the process? And like, what's my heart actually want to create with what I'm producing in that space? Yeah. Okay, so let's look at the vital state worksheet and we're just going to go through a little process. I'm going to share the screen. Okay. So if you have this out, and I know Jay, you're driving, so you can even kind of follow along in your mind. But if you have this out, or even just take some notes around it without the worksheet printed, that's fine. So the first thing, as we're assessing all of these areas that are showing up in our business, is I like to think about noticing where in my business I move into survival. Like, where am I showing up in survival state? And so sometimes it might be like, oh shit, I've got to do this because I've got to make money. And so we have all of these tools, like, am I noticing that my body's having a reaction to this experience? Am I noticing that there's a ton of belief systems, or I have a story that, like, people won't pay for this? Queer people can't afford this, right? So is my survival state sort of showing up in my mind and my beliefs? Is there a feeling or emotion that's showing up? Kind of like what Rachel was saying, is like she can really feel a lot of the emotion around like turning into a kid, and like that sort of insecurity or imposter syndrome that comes up when she's around other people who are in their authority. Or maybe it's like an expression that happens for Rachel. It's like all of a sudden I can't find my words and I can't speak. And that's not what you said, but like something like that. So if you can, go ahead and just make some notes, and it could be in all of the areas. It could be in a couple key areas where you're finding something really alive here. So for Moose, it could be about just feeling too tired. Like, I don't have anything. I don't have any energy. But like, now explore this across that spectrum. You don't have to fill this out linear, so it doesn't have to start with body. So like, I heard a little bit more emotion and expression for Rachel. So maybe she's starting there, and then she's going to like, what's my mind say about that? And how's my body feel about that? So taking one thing that's showing up that you start to recognize, like, this is feeling like a block, this is causing some challenges. Choosing just one of those areas, and then unpacking it across the layers here, these aspects of self. Hi, Justin. So Justin,
Hello.
you can just jump right in because we just started a little process.
Okay.
So if you can see the screen, and I sent a PDF too, but
Mhm.
anyway, you can just kind of write it out on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just kind of filling out this survival state one on the bottom around like an awareness of an issue for yourself, thinking about like one area of your business where you get anxious or more like blocked to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe what you're noticing is like belief systems that come up. And then what are the emotions that follow, and what are the actions that follow, and then what results happen, and what's happening in your body when that thing happens. So just kind of picking one spot where you're getting blocked and filling out just the survival state part.
Okay.
So Rachel, can I check in with you? How is that going for you? Are you sort of unpacking some of those layers?
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit about yours, and then we'll go into the deeper process?
Sure. Yeah, I did too. So maybe one I'll share is just around this, like, am I doing this thing right or wrong? And that could be anything. So I guess kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, this idea of like, do I need to buy a program for this? Like, do I need to have some training around this, like website copy? So in my mind, I have this perception, this story that I'm going to be missing something that others have to be successful, and that I'll need to like buy a program for that, which I think the emotion that comes up, or the feeling that comes up, is kind of like scarcity. Like I feel scarce. Like I feel like there's an energy, maybe this is the expression, but just an energy of tension, of needing to fix something, of urgency. And then what I'll do is I'll ruminate, and I'll research, and I'll look at things over and over again. I'll compare prices, I'll compare programs. And I think the result of that is I might even end up losing some authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten to the body part with that yet, but the false sense of anxiety or like feeling like I can't focus on anything else. And I know I do lose a good, I have a lot harder of a time sitting in like a meditative space, or I lose out on my practices when I'm in this space, because I feel like I don't have time for that. I should be looking at this stuff. I should be looking at research. I should be figuring that out. I should be making that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that share. And just by hearing you speak about the different aspects of self and unpacking them a little bit, I can understand so much even more clear. And so what I heard you say is that there's some sort of, in the mind, right? There's some, which is stored in the body, but like in the mind, there's some sort of perception of like, I'm not enough. I don't have enough. I don't know enough. And therefore, like, I'm not going to make the right decision, and I have to make the right decision, right? So there's some beliefs of like, if I don't make the right decision, who knows what's going to happen too. Like we'd have to unpack that a little bit more, right? And then this anxiety comes, and sort of this urgency comes, which I can feel as you're talking about it. It goes from this balanced space to like, I'm going to go into my head, and I'm just going to start spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. And then I loved how you named that the ultimate result is you losing your authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think that one was tied to the one I shared together scenario. And I was like, whoa, this is totally tied together here.
Right. Isn't that amazing? So, it's a great example. Thanks for sharing. And it's also, I'm so glad that you did too, because the homework for each of you is going to be able to is to just work with this chart. And I'm going to give another little fun process too before, but just to work with some of these pieces to unpack it more. And then I'm going to show you how to a couple tools for switching into the vital state. And we'll do that in a second. I'm going to total sidebar it here for a moment today and say that this worksheet, I don't know if we'll get to in vital school this year, but I've often brought this into school for people to use while they're seeing their clients. So as you're listening to a client talk about what's on their mind, you should fill in one of these boxes or a couple of these boxes on the bottom. And then you use your beautiful question skills to help kind of fill out the full picture, right? So someone might be presenting on an emotional level. Justin and me do coaching. Jay does coaching. A lot of people come in with results. And we use our Spidey questions to get deeper and deeper and deeper and fill out the full profile of their survival state. And then we can work at those deeper levels to shift into the vital state and then help them see the full picture. So this is a great tool if you're still sort of trying to get this work down more linearly. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. All right, so everyone filled out a little bit around the bottom. Any questions or thoughts around some of that?
Yeah, I know it's not one of my greatest attributes to write things down. I'm actually getting much better with my journaling and things like that, but just having the one box written down, other things started popping up through the process. So yeah, this is and kind of a direction that I didn't even think it was going to head at first.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so this is why what we're doing and understanding these different aspects of self is so potent in our therapy, right? And that what we're offering people, because you come in with an idea of what's presenting, and as we unpack it, we realize what's actually playing out. So thanks for sharing that, Tom. Okay, everyone ready to move to the next step? You catching up, Justin?
I'm at my own pace. I was trying to just get it downloaded and
Yeah.
my computer. I'm in the middle of the woods. So my computer isn't going. So I'll do this. So I got the concept. I'll do it on my own time.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. So if
you hear me?
you are in a space that you're not driving a car, you can just take a few moments and close your eyes. And if you can, just check in with your blueprint. And we're not going to do anything except access that energy. Find your own blueprint where it lives in your body. Start to breathe into this alignment. We're just going to take a sacred few minutes here just to help you connect and align. And if it feels hard in this moment to access your blueprint, you could try to connect with your adult self. That feels easier, okay? Just some part of your core, your ground, adult self, blueprint any of these carriers of wisdom that live within you. Just some really beautiful deep breaths connecting to. Once you access this new state of being, or access your vital state, you're going to ask to be shown some new wisdom. So if you can ask your blueprint its perspective of this topic. So the example we're using is Rachel's around doing things right or wrong. And so from Rachel's blueprint, she's going to kind of check in with her blueprint and say, what is your perspective of doing things right or wrong? From my adult self, how does my adult self feel about doing things right or wrong? Noticing how your blueprint feels in their body. Noticing who you need to be or get to be in order for this issue to be a non-issue. Just being present with this blueprint, your blueprint. Noticing the emotions that are present from the blueprint's perspective. And that when your body feels this way and you have these thoughts and feelings, noticing how you show up differently. Then imagining what results might be different. And so whether it's one of these boxes that come into clarity or all of them, go ahead and kind of journal out, fill out these boxes of once you shift into that vital state, what about this topic shifts? If you have any questions, just let me know.
Yeah, I have a question. one of the things I was chewing on is, and maybe having a better understanding of this process, because I didn't write it through, but just not following through.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of feeling into that adult self energy and didn't really get much feedback. And so the only thing I really noticed was myself just being like unwavered by that, to not follow through. Um, like just still holding sturdy and strong in my body in terms of like filling out the top vital state
Yeah,
piece to go along. That's
there was another
confused.
question that I was gonna give you after this, and I'm gonna give it to you now and just sit with it and see what comes. Okay. So the question is, and you don't have to answer this right away, just sit with it for a moment, Justin, is who would I have to be in order to follow through? Let your body give that answer, not your head. I'm going to come back to Rachel and your example. If you can share if anything came through, what came through, if you got stuck with it.
Yeah. A couple things came through. I think what seems to be sitting the most is kind of this idea that like there might just not be a right or wrong, that it's just a process, and that there's no deficit. Like maybe I know how to do things, maybe I don't know how to do things, but there's no like internal deficit around that. And I guess the emotion that came up was more maybe of neutrality or possibility. I put abundance, but maybe I don't know that I feel quite abundant, but maybe just more, yeah, like instead of scarcity, there's more possibility, which creates a little bit more calm, and it feels a little bit more fun. The process feels more fun that way. Mm-hmm. And the result is that I have authority even in not quite knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to ask a question for you, Rachel, and I think you're a great person that we're using this example for, because, you're someone who I know, like as a therapist and all the work that you've done personally, there's a lot of pieces where it's like, and yet this thing still exists in you.
Yeah.
And we can't just like shift with our head, right? And the process I'm giving you today, it is a little bit of a mindset. We're definitely bypassing. We're not going into the trauma, and we're not going into parts work. And yet there's this piece of unpacking it and then like tapping into this inner wisdom that is the soul, that we're tapping into an inner knowing. And it's not like just our head knowing, it's a deeper knowing. And so I find for myself, and I'm wondering how you experience this, Rachel, or anybody else, that when I tap into this deeper wisdom within me and like actually connect my brain to that knowing, it's harder for me to forget. Like, it's like, oh, now I know this. It's not just my head trying to convince this other part of me. It's like a knowing that lives in my body. And now I can work with like these 5-minute morning meditations on sitting with like there is no right or wrong, and there's no deficit. And like what feeling that brings up, and I can start to work with, right, how do I program this state into my being every morning so that those things that get me anxious or wrapped up in my business can be cleared out, and I can actually operate more from that state of possibility that's more fun. So I'm wondering how that process was for you, Rachel, in comparison to just telling yourself to like not think that way.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I totally was it like this was a whole like brain thing for me. Yeah, I didn't I feel like I did have like more of a knowing, but I kind of just ignored it because I think when I like some parts like were coming up around that, but the knowing that's actually been coming up for a while, and it relates to this, is more of like, you don't need it. You don't need it. Like I keep feeling that really strongly around some of the stuff that I'm worried about. Like you just don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
And the sitting with it, I think, is the hard part for me, the embodying that, because again, as I mentioned before, what tends to go for me first is like that sacred space that I try to hold for myself in the mornings. And so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but it is, I'm just kind of being reflective right now on how it's interesting that I totally didn't even think about that more felt knowing that I've had, and went right to like, okay, what does my brain want to say about this?
Yeah. Yeah. So this comes back to like this integrity piece we were talking about earlier, of like being in alignment and being in relationship with our blueprint, or whatever you connect with. Like I know not every person has a direct connection with their blueprint right away, so I hesitate to just say that, but it's like this integrity of what is my commitment to acting from a vital state? And the blueprint, working with the blueprint, is the direct alignment with the vital state. And so if we look at all of these blocks, all of these survival state pieces that are coming up for us and blocking us in our business, and then we tap into our blueprint and say, okay, what's the fucking truth? And like, what do I actually know? And can I make a commitment to the knowing versus the loyal soldiers and these parts? And can I start to live from that space? So as we were talking about integrity and like seeing the things that are getting in our way, all right, can I have the integrity to go sit down with this worksheet, write out yet one more? I mean, like we can all fill out 20 of these worksheets. And do I have the integrity to then tap into my knowing and trust it? And I know that some of us need to do work around that trust with our blueprint, but like, then that's the work that needs to happen first. Because if you don't have a trust of that inner knowing, like you are not being guided to where you need to go. That relationship has to be number one for you to get to where you're wanting to go with this work. And so this is a way. And so as you're working with your business, like there's so many opportunities for healing every time you find yourself in survival. I think about it like this, like every time I find myself in a survival state, or like something gets triggered in me, it's my higher self calling me forward. It's my higher self saying, hey, like this isn't in alignment with you anymore. Like you need to look at this because my blueprint's ready to be done with this. So one more question to write down is the one I just gave Justin. And so a direct word, and this really resonates with me because I can like sort of feel my intuition in my body. Not everybody is to the point where this question works, but I'm going to give it to you to play with. It's, who would I need to be in order to? Who would I need to be in order to? And a lot of times how I complete that sentence is in order to, or in order for this to be a non-issue. So I do a process called Make Love with Fear. And it's like this process of like writing down all our fears. And it's like, who would I need to be in order for this fear to be a non-issue? In order for this belief system to be a non-issue? In order for this thing that is causing stress to be a non-issue? And for me, it's like this wisdom in me almost like I feel it erupt from my body. And it's like, oh, well, I would have to like stand confident in my worth. And there's this felt sense that comes through. And then I can say, well, what beliefs would I have? What emotions would I have? How would I show up in the world? What would the results be? So identifying these areas where we show up in survival, or these loyal soldiers that are coming up, and then accessing that inner wisdom through the blueprint, through your adult self, through that question, to like get into your knowing around what's actually true. Recognizing that every time you experience suffering, it is a call to your higher self. Every time you feel suffering, it's your higher self saying, this belief isn't in alignment. This thought that you are thinking, if it causes suffering, is not in alignment with your soul. Write that down. If this thought I am thinking causes suffering, it is not in alignment with my soul. It's coming from a survival state. So I'd love for you, we can chat a little bit for anyone who wants to stay on for just another few minutes, but I would love for you to take some time over the next few weeks to fill out let's actually encourage each of you to fill out 10 of these with 10 different areas. And it doesn't even have to be in your business if that's not what's presenting. Just to even get a more linear flow to this work that we're doing at Vitalist School. And for those of you who can apply like 10 of these to your business. And then you do the integration by working with these in your meditations in the morning, or like Rachel's example of like, she goes to that website and she's getting on like overwhelmed with all of this advice from so many people. And she can then more easily come back to that felt sense in her body of like, I don't actually need anything. Like I actually know enough to get me going. And coming back to that felt sense of like, I know enough, I've got this. And she needs to clear her mind for a minute. She needs to get that overwhelm to step aside. She needs to sit in that body sensation. And then the emotions will clear and her mind will clear and she can take the right action. Okay. I do want to check in, but I also want to take a little poll. Our next one I have scheduled at 8 a.m. And I just want to check in. There's two options. Do we want to switch that to evening? Because I feel like this is a little tricky and kind of even throws me off a little bit when everybody's kind of moving around and at work and stuff. Because I knew I wanted to go into process today, but then like half of like everybody's everywhere today a little bit. So it throws me off a little bit. I want us to be able to like sink in deep. So would an evening call be better? Or do you want to try to do like an in-person, like the day after Vitalist school sometime or something like that? Any thoughts around that?
When are you looking to have in the next one?
The next one is scheduled.
April 27th.
Thanks. So we could do that evening.
Yeah, depending on the time, evening will work best for me.
I will actually be on the west side of the state at that point. I don't know where I'm going to be.
We could try to do an in-person Monday, the day after Vitalist school, or is that too much for everybody?
That would work for me. But also evening on 27th would work too. So either or, I'm open to whatever works for everyone.
Are you staying on the west side of the state that week, Tom?
You're saying that 20.
Let's keep it with the 20. I guess let's just keep it with the 27th. But how about we switch to evening? Does that work for you, Rachel?
Should be fine.
James says yes. Justin. Okay. All right, I'm gonna switch that one then until like let's do 7. And I feel like this was just a little choppy. So if you can sit with this process and just play with it a little bit and just message me on our group Voxer with questions that are coming up around this process. I would really appreciate that. I've actually got another worksheet too. I can give and do a little video or explanation on that if you want another process that's similar. And another invitation I was going to offer is to sit for a minute and look at like all of the loyal soldiers that are coming up around your business and map each one of those out. And again, like this process of the practitioner track, like I can't go into all of your loyal soldiers with you, but it's this invitation of the depth of work that it takes to step into this work and the integrity that we go about it as. And so you looking at all the loyal soldiers that are getting in your business in way of you stepping into your fullness as a practitioner is part of the integrity. You doing these survival states and tracking where you're moving into survival when it comes to stepping into your business, this is part of the integrity. And it doesn't have to all happen at once. It won't. This will take years. Like we'll just keep chipping away. I'm chipping away still at mine. But like this is giving you some process of how to do that with a like direct, like let's go at it. Okay. So anyone who has to get off the call, thank you so much for showing up today. I'm really glad that you all did show up, even if it's like middle of the day. We've got some movement happening. But wanting to just also take some time to check in with questions, or Justin, how did that question settle with you? Did anything come through? comments, anything that's alive right now?
Hey, I got to run into my appointment over here. So
Go
love
for it.
everybody. Have a
Thanks.
good one. I'll be sure to watch the video a few times too. So.
Thanks.
So I feel like for me, just as I've been doing this work and stepping into this space, there hasn't been a ton of resistance around a lot of things, other than right the money piece and signing on clients. And so maybe that's just one big thing I need to work on. But yeah, it's almost like maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit, but yeah, it's like it feels like it could be so easy, right? Because if that's just the one thing that I need to work on, then it would all, fall into line after that. So yeah, I don't know if there's a question here or just like a statement. Like it really doesn't feel like there's a ton of stuff for me to work through, other than these two big things of like believing that people are willing to invest in themselves, and that when I present, a $2,000 package to someone, that they're actually going to want to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, and so I love that you can see sort of a simplicity and like, okay, like here's my map and this is the piece to really like move towards, because I can see how it's blocking me. And like there's probably a fair amount of complexity in that piece, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I had to work through something similar with just right, like walking someone through a somatic practice during a call, right? Because the belief that I had in my mind for a long time was people don't want to slow down and do this shit, right? And so that was really hard for me to step into that, but I've gotten through some of that for the most part. But even that, looking at that a little bit deeper and seeing how I can shift the experience for myself in that too. So yeah, cool, thanks.
Yeah. Any other comments? Questions?
Yeah, your question just brought up like my body just kind of calmed down or like settled a little bit more. It's coming from a place of a more centeredness, more calm. And then so from there, I would take that and then just kind of run through that document of like, what would my beliefs be if I were in this calm, centered place? And coming through, yeah, if I was that person that is in that state, then just kind of going through the different sections to kind of filter that through. Is that what I'm picking up?
Yes. Okay, I just geek out over this part, and like we haven't gotten to this a ton in school yet, but like I geek out over how much wisdom our bodies have within them. And we just run on the programs that are the old programs of the loyal soldiers and these patterns, which were programmed so long ago. But like, how fucking brilliant is it that you just said, well, who would I need to be? And your whole body's like, oh, like I'd need to be me, like I know exactly who I need to be, and I can feel it in my body. And like, then my belief systems come, and oh, this is the emotions that go with that. And here's how I would take action. And there's this wisdom that is already within you, like right there. And it's so profound when we can learn to actively be in relationship to the wisdom. And it might take a little bit for like you to switch channels, right? Like you're getting all of your
Yeah,
direction
think,
from the loyal soldier. And it's going to take a bit to switch channels to get it from the wisdom and start acting in alignment with the wisdom.
Mhm.
Sorry, there's such a delay.
yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's I want to be coming from that embodied place within my business, and yeah, I mean, I want to go through this video again, but I think when I'm collecting, it's just getting more into integrity of honoring that vital state, honoring that inner wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
being in
yeah,
relationship.
I've got a lot to chew with them.
Yeah.
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 I just signed up for a coaching program with this guy online, and he's seems like he's got a great thing going. But I know, like, the accountability is a big piece for me. Yeah, I've been kind of sitting with that a little bit more this week.
It's breaking
be,
up. It's
that
breaking
could be
up,
helpful.
Justin. Yep, sorry. Yeah, let me know. I'd love to hear about that.
Also, just
Sorry, it's breaking up, Justin. Like there's a big
okay. You're good.
leave me a Voxer about that because I'd love to hear it, or let's all connect
It's
on
okay.
our channel. But thanks guys. Sorry this felt a little choppy in my share and my delivery, and so I might even just do a little recap, or like please just ask me some questions because this feels a little choppy. But really, you've got to like step in and engage this practice a little bit so that we can actually talk about it deeper and work with it in a little bit of a deeper way. So if you can this week, like do a few of those practices so that we can continue the conversation. Okay. And it's going to lead and help you see, like some of it you can just shift, some of it you can just engage the new wisdom, and those other pieces, it's going to be like, okay, here's where to have some sessions on, here's where to do some of that deeper work. Okay. So much love to all of you. Can't wait to chat more about it on our Voxer, and big hugs. Keep doing the good work. Like you are stepping into this and you deserve to.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.